Yoko sat in that very chair.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're counting down our picks for the most upsetting things Yoko Ono has done.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Number 10. Season of Glass. The death of John Lennon shook the entire world, with Yoko Ono, understandably, taking it particularly hard. In order to deal with her loss, Ono recorded a new solo album, illustrating her bereavement. Her decision to release an album already raised eyebrows, with some believing she was exploiting on John's death, but it was the cover art that really drew the ire of Beatles fans. The image featured a half-empty glass of water, and next to it, a pair of the same glasses John wore on the day of his death, smeared in blood. Considering this was less than 6 months after his death, this came across as in incredibly poor taste, and the album was met by a wave of controversy. Number 9. Crediting Debate. If you've watched any of our videos about songs written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, you know that the two often teamed up to write some legendary tracks for themselves and others. Many of these were labelled as Lennon-McCartney productions, but this crediting was not entirely accurate. A considerable number were written primarily by Paul, and so he pitched to Beatles manager Brian Epstein the idea that those written by him should be labelled McCartney-Lennon productions instead, where applicable, and vice versa. Epstein agreed, but it never came to fruition. So in 2002, Paul attempted once again to get it instated. Yoko Ono did not like this. She threatened legal action against Paul, getting her lawyer to state that he was only doing it now that John wasn't there to argue. She also labelled his actions as absolutely inappropriate, though many Beatles fans believed she shouldn't really have a say in the matter. Paul conceded, and the credits remained the same. Number 8. Bashing Paul. Beatles fans often blame Yoko for the falling apart of John and Paul's seemingly unbreakable friendship. Though the two seem civil now, there have been a number of occasions where Yoko has spoken out against Paul. It's suggested by some that, despite Lennon being the sole credit of the song, Yoko took a huge role in writing the track How Do You Sleep, which famously took shots at Paul. Though perhaps most biting of all was when Yoko belittled Paul's writing talents in a BBC interview, labelling him the Salieri to John's Mozart. She also once told a story about how John would often ask why people cover Paul's songs instead of his. She allegedly responded to him, saying that it's because John's songs were deeper and more artistic, whereas Paul sang frivolously, such as rhyming June with spoon. To discount the talents of many a Beatles fan's hero did not go down very well. Number 7. Auctioning off John's items. It's often been said that Yoko's treatment of John's firstborn child from a previous marriage was less than favourable. Some accounts indicate that she never really did consider Julian to be John's true son. That became quite apparent when Yoko Ono did the unthinkable and put a number of John's items on auction after he'd passed away, including letters Julian had sent to his father.
No, it's not only that, it's a lot of his belongings that were auctioned off by Yoko, and a lot of his, whether they were personal possessions or whether they were instruments,
This left Julian, and many others, understandably distraught, and he was forced to use a large sum of his inheritance money from his father in order to buy these precious items back.
I've been buying his stuff back, with that. So I'm buying his stuff back with his money, which is absolutely insane,
Fortunately for Julian, Paul McCartney assisted him in buying some of the items back, so we can only imagine how he felt about her decision at the time. Number 6. Interrupting jam sessions. Paul has made it no secret at all that he didn't want Yoko in the studio when the gang were working.
Those were very paranoid times,
I know.
And let's face it, we didn't welcome Yoko in the studio.
I know.
Because we thought it was a guy thing.
He didn't originally have anything against her. In fact, he preferred if all the family members left the room mid-session. But John insisted on Yoko being there. If you've seen any of the footage from these sessions, you'll see that she didn't keep quiet, and more often than not, Paul is visibly annoyed by her presence and interruptions. Number 5. The Advert. Many have accused Yoko of profiting off John in the years since his passing. This was perhaps most prevalent when in 2001, over 20 years after his death, Yoko cashed in again by allowing an image of the two to be shown in an advert for Absolute Vodka. The picture was from their infamous Two Virgins record, which depicts the two stark naked. Yoko was able to make a tidy £350,000 by selling off John's image once again. Number 4. Not buying the rights. Shortly after John's death, the publishing rights to many of the Beatles songs were on sale by the company who owned them. Paul was approached by the company with an offer of selling to him for £20 million. Paul almost jumped at the chance, but then believed it might be unethical for him to own them all and not have John's estate involved too. He approached Yoko with splitting the purchase between them 50-50 in honour of John's legacy. However, Yoko believed that they could get a much better price and discouraged him from buying. That turned out to be a huge mistake. As a result, Michael Jackson outbid them on the rights, causing irreparable damage to his and McCartney's friendship. Fortunately, many years later, Paul finally got the rights back. Number 3. Blocking Julian's inheritance. We spoke earlier about Yoko's mistreatment of Julian Lennon with the auctioning situation. Julian became almost resentful of his father's peace and love messages, pointing out his adultery and treatment of his own son, clearly in reference to how Yoko had changed him.
But she seems to be a difficult woman, multi-layered.
Oh, very multi-layered. I think on many levels very manipulative.
When John was still alive, tensions between Julian and Yoko were quite obvious, but she appeared to show her true colours after his passing. Shockingly, Julian was excluded from his father's will. All the money went to Yoko.
But, yeah, I mean, I think she knew exactly what she was doing from day one.
Okay.
You know, she played it innocent, but I think she had it all planned.
Instead, a trust of £100,000 was to be split between him and his half-brother Sean. Julian had to go to extremes to get what he deserved, eventually suing his father's estate, leading to Yoko having to pay him £20 million. It really shouldn't have had to come to that. Number 2. The Chuck Berry incident. When people heard that John Lennon and the legendary American musician Chuck Berry were going to perform together on the Mike Douglas Show back in 1972, they could not be more excited. After all, these were two of the biggest names in rock and roll.
Information to get in touch with my Marie. He's the only one who's only here.
The two were rocking out Berry's tracks Memphis, Tennessee and Johnny B. Good when suddenly Yoko showed off her talents.
Just a half a mile from the Mississippi.
Her wailing absolutely killed the moment, and even Chuck Berry was visibly disturbed at what she was doing. Fortunately, one brave sound technician made the amicable decision to mute Yoko's microphone, so the audience no longer had to suffer. Number 1. Driving a wedge between the Beatles.
Hey, Yoko Ono is on Mad About You this week.
Mad About You? Okay, that way I remember.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. She'll be playing a conniving who broke up the Beatles.
All right, hey!
This one is highly debated as to its validity, but honestly, this is what Yoko Ono is most famous for. For years, Beatles fans have pointed the finger at Yoko as to why the Beatles broke up. Fans have argued there is some evidence that might indicate its truth, some of which have been indicated in this very video, but there's been a number of interviews that also seem to suggest otherwise.
Well, all of that about her being the problem with the group, is that slightly silly that one woman could be so much of a problem?
No, the group had problems long before Yoko came along. Many problems, folks.
Alas, many blame Yoko not just for the initial breakup, but also for discouraging John to break the bread with Paul for a potential reunion. But of course, no one will truly know other than the Beatles themselves, who seem to have varying opinions from time to time.
Because they like the idea of us being in a boxing ring, you know, sort of fighting.
Also, it's good to have, people like having someone to demonise, people like having someone to blame. You know, and you were the easy target, I guess.
True or false, this will always be the reason Yoko pisses off Beatles fans the most. Do you think the Yoko hate is unjustified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
Now fess up or I'll do to you what I did to John Lennon. John, have you met Yoko, John?
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.